S-OneLP Spotlight today features our partner Kustom Group, manufacturer of overprint varnishes and coatings. I had the pleasure of speaking with Matt Apke, the chemist for Kustom Group recently. Let's take a look at our conversation. Hi, Matt. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Sharon. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We really appreciate our partnership and everything you do for S-OneLP. Can you tell me how Kustom Coating Solutions is helping converters protect the substrates?
Yeah, that's a great question because it can come in two forms. With supplying primers for direct application to substrates, we're helping improve print quality or maybe some migration through those substrates, as well as the overcoats, which are responsible for not only protecting the graphics, but making sure that those substrates are surviving the process, whether that be the print process or the filling process if it's in packaging, transportation, all of those things. So protecting that substrate is sort of the primary thing. Otherwise, those packagings or labels or whatever that you're printing on isn't going to exist.
Understood. Thank you. And one of the reasons we chose you as a partner is your flexibility. You're truly flexible with solutions available for E-beam overprint varnishes, some aqueous, UV, oil-based. Can you tell us more about your special formulations and their benefits?
Absolutely. I think it puts us at a bit of an advantage to some other people because we're dealing with three different chemistries and they're pretty much used across different platforms within the industry. The big offset printers, a lot of times we're printing oil-based conventional inks, and then they're wanting to prime with a water coating to later on add UV coating on top of that. So there's three different chemistries within a print structure that a lot of people aren't understanding the dynamics of. What do I need to do to make sure that that ink dries? What do I need to make sure that that primer is sticking to the ink, sticking to the substrate? And then I'm putting UV coating on top of it. What dynamics are coming in there, right? As we start to add more and more processes to these things, where are those weaknesses? Being in those three technologies, we understand where those weaknesses are, how those technologies are working in cohesion with one another, but also they offer a unique opportunity to do some creative things with contrasting chemistries, especially when we're talking about effect type of printing, where people are looking for special decorative abilities, right? We can blend those chemistries and get some different things to happen. One of the biggest ones is like a reticulation strike through, where it looks like there's water droplets beating up on a print or whatever. That can be done in one pass, and that's typically done with like an oil-based overprint varnish and a UV coating or a water coating. So understanding those three different chemistries really offers us an advantage because we're just exposed to more of the print world than, say, if we were focused in one general area. And I think the other thing that really makes it unique for us as well is we are custom because we want to customize solutions for people. So if you go into a print shop and let's say they have an offset press where they're running oil-based inks, they don't have a coating unit and they're looking to do something like a soft touch, or they're looking to add UV coating type of materials to it. We understand what needs to be done in those dynamics to offer it. You may not be able to get it in an oil-based solution, but because we're doing water and UV, we're kind of that one-stop shop where you can just say, hey, here's what I'm operating with. What can you offer within that window? And it just gives us more solutions to the press room in general. We're seeing that a lot today too, with as people are moving to digital print. So if you're going from, say, heat set publication, where you're doing oil-based inks, you're putting a UV coating on top on current publications, but those volumes are getting smaller. So now you're going to print digital. Well, that substrate's going to be different. That UV coating may lay differently over top of it. And because we're familiar with those processes, I think we're able to offer a bit of an advantage there already because we're trying to think a step ahead. So those three chemistries really provide us with a unique difference to the industry, and then we just have a broader scope of the different combinations that can be applied.
Absolutely. And you and I have worked on several projects together. One sticks out in my head where a customer wanted a specific haze value to his matte coating. And I think you did 5 different iterations for us until we got it exactly how the customer wanted it. And that was amazing. Can you tell me how Kustom Coatings can help converters increase an existing revenue stream or potentially move into a new revenue stream?
Yeah, it's a lot of what we've been working on lately as people are trying to figure out how to reduce costs, especially without adding capital investment. So they're looking at their existing equipment, and in the offset world, we have a lot of guys who have to do multiple passes through the press. Well, every time you're putting it through a press, obviously, is a cost that is associated with it. So we're trying to figure out solutions with saying, all right, how many ink units do you have, and what can we put in those ink units that maybe we can do some sort of combination of, an overprint varnish and a coating where something may be imprintable so that you can lay over top. So we're looking for not just solutions from a coating perspective or an overprint perspective. We're also looking at the process and saying, all right, how can we incorporate things into the process that will fix that process while providing those solutions from the print side as well? As far as new streams, right, it's more along the lines of with the digital equipment. So many people are getting into that digital area and needing those machines. And I think a lot of them don't understand the dynamics that come with it. So for us, it's helping them understand not just the dynamics of application, but where can those particular print media type things offer them some opportunities in areas that they've not had in the past. And again, I think that's part of with us being in 3 chemistries and not just in the chemistries, right? We're in the offset world. We're in the flexo world. We're in the digital world. We have guys who are doing screen print. We have being exposed to those different applications. Now we can offer solutions to people because we're understanding not just the dynamics of their application, but where other people might be using similar things in a different area than their standard print method.
Thank you. And do you know what are some of the most popular applications Kustom Koatings is providing?
That's changing all the time. That's such a great question, because how do we gauge that, right? So of late, there's been a lot. Let's go back just a second. So typically it has been in the offset world. So a large litho person, and then strike through is a common term that's used in that world. So that's where you're using all in one pass. You can do a matte gloss contrast. So it's using typically a matte overprint varnish and a litho ink unit, applying UV coating over the entire sheet, and you get that matte gloss contrast in those 2 areas, where typically that was a multiple pass or that was cutting of a special blanket and things like that. So that was extremely popular for us for a long time. And we're trying to push more of that decorative, right? Several people had started coming out with great marketing pieces. Sappy was one of the best, who came out with the Sappy book and started showing all these wonderful effects like soft touch, like grit, feel, so people were starting to look at tactile. Now people are starting to look at more of the pearls or glitters and how can we apply those things. And those are the ones that are really exciting to work on, because some people know what are there, and we're helping guide them through what's capable, especially when it comes to their equipment, right? Do you have the right equipment to apply? Some people will just say, man, I need a silver pearl, or I need a silver glitter. Well, what do you mean by that? And what exactly are you trying to print? That seems to be more of the thing. People are looking for more unique, different, that can differentiate those packages or whatever they're printing more than anything else. It's interesting to watch as printers do it too, because they're obviously leveraging, hey, we're capable of doing those things, and it makes them relatively unique. Going back a little bit too, right, to say it's such a unique question, we deal so much with regulatory things. So a lot of times what becomes popular is forced by what's going on in the environment. So say coming in COVID, right, we had this large supply chain issue. So a lot of times the most popular things were just basic gloss and matte things that we can run. But then as those started to come, we start looking more at regulatory things that are happening. We've had some monomers that have been classified as different things. So what is the impact of that going to be? Prop 65 is still a huge thing. Nestle has become such a huge popular buzzword that people keep asking for those. And it's trying to walk them through, do you really need, and what's going to happen? So it becomes ever changing, especially as these regulations change, right? All of a sudden a regulation changes and that becomes the most popular just because it's a need to have happen. But, with working with you guys, a lot more has been more in that flexible market. Shrink sleeve application has been huge. People are looking at alternative ways of getting rid of plastics and going towards paper-based things. And how can we make those paper-based things more resilient to those processes in water and behave more like a plastic? So it's ever changing but a lot of times the regulatory restrictions will dictate what we're doing.
Yeah. So recently you just developed some, Nestle compliant coatings for us. And I believe you're also now Teflon-free or PFAS-free.
Correct.
Which
And
is
that's
amazing.
one, right? That became huge. Everybody all of a sudden needed that out. Well, that was such a critical raw material for like heat resistance and rub resistance and probably 85% of our coatings. So how do you, and it's the best thing out there. There's nothing that beats PTFE, but you got to get rid of it because now it comes with that label. So that's another example and a great example of how the regulatory stuff really shifts.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having to develop those things. And it's not that difficult really for us because it's right. When we've been developing things, we typically wouldn't add PTFE to something because it came with an extra cost. So we were always looking at ways to do that. So it was relatively easy for us to do. But yeah, those are always the biggest challenges. And this TMPTA thing will be interesting to watch what happens because it changes the SDS and it's more with people using it and how they handle it. So it was a huge buzzword as it was going on. And we were focusing on what are we going to do? Do we need to shift our manufacturing processes? Do we need to change coatings? And all along, I was just saying, guys, hold still for a minute because we know what to do in order to get rid of it. We're always looking at those kind of things, but it may just be something that is raised a red flag, but in the end, nobody's really concerned about it. So those things have been in place. SDSs are going out now with that change, and we're not hearing a whole lot of change from that big perspective. So it's where we also have to be careful, right? Because a lot of times those things come out, I think people start to think, oh my gosh, we got to jump on board, and we overreact and we jump on board, and all of a sudden we have 50 new products replacing something that maybe we didn't need to. So there's a bit of a caution tale there as well when we watch those things.
Our team also appreciates that they can work with Kustom to develop a custom solution, as I mentioned before, to meet specific customer needs, plus the option to purchase only a gallon, right? Because most vendors make you buy a truckload if you want to custom produce something. So can you tell us a little bit about your capabilities on the custom solutions that you offer?
Absolutely right. I mean, we have to figure out how we're going to differentiate ourselves from everybody else. We're all using the same raw materials. People have been doing this all along. So coming up with those solutions, sometimes we might be on the same field as anybody else, but where we really strive to be different is in that we're capable of manufacturing a gallon. We're more than happy to sell a gallon, right? We've been operating under that. We started off as a small business. We're a small family-owned business. We wanted to fit those little niche areas. So all of our equipment and everything is not a huge cost to us anymore because it's all paid for. It's sunk. So if it's sitting idle, it's not doing anything for us. So we don't care about what size we're making because we're making sure we cost those things properly so that we can make money. But we know that it's going to fit such a small niche. Well, look what's happening in the industry as a whole, right? You're seeing more of this lower SKUs, fewer SKUs, smaller packaging. Well, people who have large manufacturing capabilities aren't going to be able to do it because it just doesn't make sense or their equipment's incapable of doing it. So we want to step in there and say, we're willing to do it because at the end of the day, we're probably going to make as much off of selling 1 gallon of something where we used to off of a drum of selling something because of how those pricing structures are created or whatever. And that's the beauty. I started off in the production floor. So a lot of the guys who are working in our labs and out in sales are people who have been involved in the production in some sense. So we understand how to make those things and what goes into making them and how that can be such a huge benefit to somebody. There's a lot of specialty printing with, say, security type things. Those are only going to be a gallon, maybe 2 gallons at a time. And so if you look at volumes, it's kind of scary, but you can make a heck of a lot off of a security coating dollars wise, where you don't in those bigger, right? If I make 100 drums of water coating, I might make the same profit as I do in 2 gallons of a security coating. So at the end of the day, it's just, we're constantly looking, how can we change and how can we be somebody, the owner of the company said, our goal is to do everything nobody else wants to. And if we hear nobody wants to make a gallon, we're willing to do it because that's how they've set up their cost structure so that they know how to make money using the equipment that we have. And again, right, we can make a gallon, we can make a bucket, we can make multiple buckets. Our largest batch size is anywhere from 20 to 40 drums. in water-based or oil-based varnish. So we have massive capabilities of doing it. And just having been around for a long time, doing it that way offers a great advantage.
And not only is it beneficial for a custom solution, but we are seeing more and more customers only stocking what they need. They're no longer bringing in large quantities to hold on the floor. So that's amazing that you offer that.
Well, and it goes back to as well, right? Beyond the capabilities of what we can do from a manufacturing side is, as we're trying to customize coatings for people, we want to offer unique solutions because we don't care. Right? It costs us nothing to have 1,500 formulas, and we probably have that many formulas. That's why we have people around to just make sure they're managing those things so we know where those formulas apply. And sometimes they get big overlap to a more general market. But we don't want to leave somebody out of doing something just because other people aren't willing to do it. So we've had instances where we've offered, right? Somebody will ask for a matte coating and we offer a general matte coating. Well, there's different definitions to people across the way. Well, we don't want to lose business just because our matte coating happened to miss a certain haze value or gloss value on a particular substrate. We don't mind changing that at all. We're not adding more raw materials. We're just changing the ratio of raw materials and calling it something different. And it's just the way this place has always been, right? It's totally been a mindset of just figuring out ways that make most people cringe a little bit, because it is funny when people come in to visit us and they are sometimes just ogle at the fact that we have those three chemistries under one roof and they're separated to different sides of the manufacturing facility, but they still can't believe we operate with three different chemistries under one roof. And then you come into our lab and we're handling all of them in one lab. Sometimes it's great to find happy accidents, is what I always like to call them, when those chemistries mix, right? We'd never look at anything as a failure. It's the potential for learning something new. And so that equates to the same thing with our capabilities. That's the way we're always looking at it, is what can we learn from making those things different? It adds as much value to us as it does to our customer.
Absolutely. So are there any new solutions being developed as technology continues to evolve?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we're doing all the time, right? It's here recently, we've had a couple of projects we've been working on that have been sitting out there for like 6 months to 9 months. We didn't have an answer for initially, but every time we meet with a supplier, I'm asking for, okay, what's new? Or I bring those particular questions up to people of, hey, I've got a customer who's looking for this. What do you have that might solve that? So we're constantly trying to find new ways to do this into applications that we haven't been able to solve in the past. We recently had somebody who was looking for, I think it was a thermal transfer over some UV inks, and they wanted it to be a UV solution. Well, it was difficult to get UV to lay or stick to it because of the dynamics of the substrate and the inks causing really low surface tension. But we were able to find a water-based solution that's in testing right now. We've got somebody who's shifting from plastic 6-pack rings, right, that will hold a 6-pack of cans together, to a paper-based. Well, obviously, the concern there is water resistance. Mm-hmm. So we're working with somebody who has a printer who's going to apply it over the substrate in general, but when they die cut those things, obviously where the cuts are, there's no coating, so they're losing some protection. They're willing to look at a sprayable solution. We offered a sprayable solution, and so far it's working, and this customer is really happy. And that's where we, again, being custom, we're going to think as far outside the box as we can. Often we'll joke we don't know where that box is, because we'll just try different things. You know, when I first started here, I asked if we attended the American Coating Show, and they were like, no, it's not our industry. And I'm like, but we're all using the same things. Shouldn't we be able to learn? Because it's all the same surface tension issues. It's just different substrates and different application methods. So a lot of times we get new ideas from there. There's a lot going on still in the Nestle arena, right? Because they're constantly changing. So we're trying to figure out how can we help people who, right? There's a general misnomer out there with, say, UV going over food contact type materials. Well, we have things in place that allow us to use UV. And so we can do things there that offer custom solutions. And that's a lot of what we're doing of late. Say you have an EB formula that is working great on a particular thing, but somebody doesn't have E-beam. They want to run it UV. Well, we're making sure we understand what UV photoinitiators are capable of going into that application to still keep it food safe, but cure under those specific things. There's been a lot of that happening of late. We've had a recent project for adhesive deadeners because somebody's looking for a different way to apply a label to a bottle and have that withstand, right, all of the things it needs to withstand, yet when it comes to recycling, literally get bumped and fall off of the bottle. Those are wildly interesting things that I never thought we'd be working on. And it's a just crazy idea. So we're always looking for those things. And it's probably the biggest thing we're trying to do now is help people who are looking to replace some of those things like, TMPTA. How do we make something similar? The PTFE thing is still something that people ask for on a general basis. And how do we make those things that are going to achieve the same sort of rub resistance or heat resistance that they were achieving previously? So those things always kind of are evolving and keeping us on our toes. But it's interesting to watch how the sustainable and green initiatives are being pushed, right? Starbucks starts to talk about getting rid of straws, and you start to hear some of the buzz of that. So when we're talking to suppliers, we're asking about biorenewable things and all of those things that are coming in. So we're constantly having that conversation, looking for what's new and what can be done next.
Thanks, Matt, for the conversation today. It was really great talking to you.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity, Sharon. Have a great day.
You too.